I thought they outplayed the 49ers. They just didn't finish. And the difference there is probably young team versus veteran team that knows how to win games.
Right.
Well, going back.
Time. But right now, we got to get to our man on the scene, John McMullen, joining us right now. And don't forget, John is brought to us by the amazing people at Mesa Law and Associates, a tough lawyer for a tough town. John McMullen joining us right now. John, thanks for joining us after this disappointing loss. There's a lot to blame to go around. Where do you put your finger? Who do you point at the most, or what is something you needed to see from the Eagles today that, quite frankly, you didn't?
Well, I thought there's very few times in an NFL game where there's a clear demarcation line. Now, I thought that was the 4th and 3, which was just a goofy play call trying to pander to the home crowd, if you ask me. But now I know it's Devin not eating a chicken wing. So
yeah, I'm sorry.
Right about it, John.
I'm sorry.
Right
Philly 2.0 didn't work out because of me. And this is my public apology.
But I thought it was that. And don't feel bad. Don't feel bad, D-Gun, if you're basic for pumpkin spice. I just like the hard stuff. Regular. So how basic?
You like the hard stuff. Wow.
Just the regular.
Oh, my goodness.
So how about
that
John?
3,
Yes, go ahead. Yes, please.
That 4th and 3 call, I mean, that's a rookie head coach making a bad decision. And, it was going to happen. We all knew it was going to happen. There were going to be some hiccups. It wasn't going to be great 100% of the time. And that was the first indication. I mean, they were dominating this football game, but they weren't cashing in on opportunities. It might be Jalen Reagor. Look, he's got a lot of talent. We all know that. We all know the athleticism. We saw the one-handed catches in practice. The route running is still not there. It's still a project that he continues to develop. He's got to give himself a little bit more space on the outside, and he steps out of bounds. That could have been a big play. And then, I mean, if you talk about Quez's 91-yard catch, I mean, it's a little bit disappointing you don't get in there, but you have a false start, then you get a penalty, you go back, you get forward. And the 4th and 3 was just, look, they probably should have took the field goal, but if you're going to go for it, I mean, it can't be that. It can't be that at this stage. And I always say, by the way, I tell nobody really, if you really think about it, nobody judges.
Oh boy, it wasn't just me.
Then
John, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We lost. I'm sorry, we lost you for a second. If we ask you, which we are, what do you have to say about that 4th down play? Go ahead. We lost you for a second.
Yeah, I mean it, and I joked about pandering because Nick, I've joked about it before. He had at one press conference he had the Phillies jersey on. Mm-hmm. Today had the AI jersey. Mm-hmm. And that was just a little too Philly special light for me. I thought he was trying to really jack up the home crowd. And you can imagine if that would have worked, what it would have done to this crowd. Right. You go back to the NFC Championship game against Minnesota. I think, I've been covering this league for a long time. I saw this crowd.
If only the line would have broken up between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts before that 4th down call.
Modern technology.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Well, John brings up. We hope to get John back. Here, go ahead, Devin.
Yeah. Well, no, I was just going to say Jimmy Kemsky on Twitter actually tweeted Nick Sirianni's Philly pandering went too far right after that play failed. And I personally don't mind the Philly pandering. I appreciate it. I call him the Ted Lasso of the NFL because even before the game started, people were kind of hating on his AI shirt because they're like, he's going too far. He's like trying to win us over too hard. And I genuinely don't think that's it. I think he's just trying to embrace Philly. I don't think his play call was like, oh yeah, this is going to win over the fans totally. I think he just genuinely thought it would work. And again, if it had worked, we would have been all in. We would have collectively lost our minds. So,
we certainly would have. We're still working on getting John back for that. But again, the cards are already against you. And the cards are already against you because you're going for it on 4th down, basically. to compound, like I said earlier, an already complex situation with a play call with a bunch of, Gunnar, as you pointed out, young receivers and a young quarterback, I thought only made it more difficult to attempt to execute in that particular play. And here's the thing. You want to talk about getting the crowd into it? You know what gets the crowd into a football game? A 91-yard pass play, which you had on that drive. Yep. It was one big play, and then you weren't able to do much after that. So that's one thing that I will look at and say, hey, this is something I wouldn't have rolled the dice on in that particular situation. Would have taken the 3 points and moved on. Let's try it one more time with our friend John McMullen, who, yes, is at the stadium at Linc Financial Field. John, do we have you back, my friend?
Yeah, I think Nick Sirianni's in charge of the Wi-Fi today as well here at Linc Financial Field. So Atlanta had no problem, but we're having a problem today. But
yeah, go figure.
Hopefully this will hold. But yeah, the fourth down, as I said, it's rare you can point to. We always talk about turning points in the NFL in NFL games. You can usually point to 2 or 3 plays. This is literally one play where before the Eagles dominated, after San Francisco dominated. So momentum might be a little bit overblown at times, but not in this instance. It just turned the entire game.
John, what was the consensus from players you talked to in the locker room in terms on lack of execution and being able to stand toe-to-toe with the team, the caliber of the 49ers?
Yeah, Gunnar, I thought the players all to a man pretty much thought they beat themselves. And I kind of agree with them. They had so many opportunities early in the game to put this game out of reach. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo played well at all. I think the Eagles' defensive line was unbelievable in the first quarter. Javon Hargrave set the tone again, really, on those first 2 drives. I think the first play was a 4-yard loss, Javon Hargrave. And we talked all week about the San Francisco run game, the run fits, what the Eagles would have to do. They did a phenomenal job defensively. That defense deserves all the credit in the world. They deserve to win this game. The offense didn't hold up their end of their bargain. And to a man, everybody thought it was a failure to execute and thought they beat themselves. And I can't really disagree with them. I thought they outplayed the 49ers. They just didn't finish. And the difference there is probably young team versus veteran team that knows how to win games.
Right.
Well, going back to the play calling, what was the overall mood from Nick Sirianni in the post-game presser?
He admitted he would like to have that play call back, the 4th and 3rd. And people said, do you regret not taking the field goal? He said, no, I just regret the play call. He probably would have went a little bit more conventional. He understands, and that's one of the good things I think with Nick Sirianni. He does understand that it's a constant battle to adjust to the adjustments being made to you. And I think if you can verbalize that, and he often does, that's a good first step, because you can't do it unless you realize it has to be done. So I think that's always a positive with Nick Sirianni. I think, I go back to its first-time rookie head coach, and it's a big spot, 70,000 fans in front of his home crowd for the first time. And I think he got a little bit too excited, and you just got to temper that sort of part of your mind down a little bit and realize it's the same as any other game. And I think maybe it would have turned out a little bit differently. But the positive side to all of this is San Francisco is a good football team. I don't know if they're going to be a Super Bowl contender, but this is a good football team. Atlanta was not. So they played with this team. They belonged on the same field with this team. And I think they've gained confidence that the fact that they went into this game and they felt they outplayed a good team. And that kind of, if you can sort of look off into the distance and say, well, that means we're a pretty good team. I think that's what the Eagles are going to take when they get over the 24-hour rule and say, we hung in there with a really, really good team.
Hey, John, I don't want to harp on this too much, but Derek Barnett, for a player who's been in the league as long as he has, I just don't understand why he keeps making the same mental mistakes over and over. On that play where the running back fumbles, the Eagles defense has them right where they want it because the ball goes back. It's going to be third and longer situation. Oh, no, flag. This knucklehead decides to cheap shot somebody in the back along the sidelines. I don't get it, man. And I think that's why a guy like Josh Sweat got the contract and Derek Barnett is still waiting for the contract. Number one, because of constant mental mistakes like that hurt a team. Number two, obviously, is because of the health factor. He still has not been a kind of player that you would consider durable that can stay healthy for long periods of time.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that one, Derek, because I think the NFL has gotten so difficult, especially for defensive players.
Right,
I mean, the strength of Derek Barnett, he's a physical, aggressive player, and sometimes that gets him in trouble injury-wise, as you mentioned. He can't stay on the field. I remember at training camp, I forget the Patriots tight end, he just leveled, and the poor guy was down on the field for about 10 minutes. And that's where Derek hurt himself on that same hit. He's just a really physical player. And sometimes that affects him. It's such a fine line. And when you're playing 100 miles an hour, and really they got two personal fouls on that same drive. The other one was on the fumble. And I think a lot of us thought it was going to be Anthony Harris because he kind of gave Troy Sermon a forearm shiver in the back of the head.
Right.
And then came the fumble. And then Kayvon Wallace comes in with his head down. He gets a 15-yard penalty. And it's like, well, that's after the fumble. So if you're not going to call it on Harris, it should at least be the Eagles football. So it's really difficult to play defense in the modern NFL. And when you play it good enough to where you only give up what the Eagles gave up today defensively and what Jonathan Gannon, 17 points. I mean, you got to win the football game. In the modern NFL, if you give up 17 points, you have to win the football game. So I got to place this loss on the offense certainly more than the defense.
Oh, definitely, and that walks me right into this question. When you talk about the offense in this particular game, 32 points last week against the Falcons, different team, you're on the road. This time, again, different team, better defensive coordinator, supposedly an up-and-coming defensive coordinator, D'Amico Ryans. What was the difference for this offense? Why did they struggle so much in this particular game to go 32 points to 11 points? Why was there that drop-off, you think, John?
Well, I think there wasn't as much consistency in between the big plays. I mean, you had a lot of big plays. You had, obviously, most notably, Quez. I mentioned how close they were with Jalen Reagor. Late in the game, where it set up the touchdown, you had the 27, 28-yard scramble from Jalen Hurts. You had all these big plays, and then you look at the rest of the play, and it was just there was no consistency. I don't think Dallas Goedert was targeted until the fourth quarter. I didn't understand that. I think no receiver caught more than 2 passes. They tried to get Devontae. I think Devontae had 7 targets, but they weren't effective, other than he drew a couple of PI calls that were questionable from San Francisco's standpoint, to be honest. I just thought it was very uneven. And Nick Sirianni talked about the fine line between off-schedule offense and getting the football out on time. And I think we're going to have this struggle with Jalen Hurts throughout the season because so much of his strengths as a player are the off-schedule stuff. But if you want consistency as an offense, that football's got to come out on time. You got to run the plays. And it's sort of this weird, almost purgatory you're in. You want to take advantage of what Jalen Hurts does well. And then you get a little bit frustrated when the ball doesn't come out on time.
You mentioned Dallas Goedert, and I think at one point I literally had to Google, like, is he injured? And, like, no one knows. I swear I saw him once in the game. And, Josh Sweat just got paid. Mailata got paid last week. I know Goedert's still waiting to get paid. Is it just a coincidence that Goedert has yet to get paid and, renew with the Eagles, and we saw him hardly at all this game? Is that something to be concerned about?
I don't think the contract is something to be concerned about. I just think it's more a difficult negotiation. You see the money numbers with Josh Sweat and Jordan Mailata, but they are really team-friendly contracts. if those guys were to hit the open market after playing well, they would, you're going to be lauding Howie Roseman for those, how team friendly those deals were. I think if Dallas Goedert would take that, he would have already had an extension. But he and his agent understand if they play out the season and they just play the way that Dallas is thought of around this league, he's going to be the top paid tight end in the entire NFL. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be the best, but we all know contracts in this league are about timing and circumstance. It's his turn. So if the Eagles got him to bite, so to speak, on a team-friendly deal, he'd already be extended. I think he's going to kind of bet on himself, and I think he should. I think it's a smart way to go.
Well, then back to just this game, contracts aside, why did we barely see him or Zach Ertz?
Well, that's a good question, Devin. I don't know how you don't get to Dallas Goedert until the fourth quarter, and he made a couple big plays at that point. But if you look at Jalen Hurts, he didn't complete a lot of passes. I think it was 12. I don't have it in front of me. So they weren't completing a lot of passes to begin with. I think the running game was sort of the plan coming in. So if you look at it, I think Miles maybe had 13. So between Miles and Kenny, you had about 20 carries, at 10 on top of that. So they were running the football a lot. And then when you get behind and you got to throw the football, I don't think that's the strength of Jalen Hurts as a player. And B, you probably don't have the feel for the passing game because you haven't been really using it or developing it in the first 30, 45 minutes of the game. So I think this might have been a little bit different if the Eagles were playing from ahead, and that's why that 4th and 3 was that big turning point. And once they got behind, it changes the whole sort of dichotomy of the game.
No, it was certainly something that I was worried about as well when you look at the fact that you had, I believe it was 4 total targets for your tight ends in this game, which is just mind-boggling to me. And you're right, Jalen Hurts, 12 completions in this game, 12 for 23 for 190 yards, and obviously 91 of those yards coming on one big play to Quez Watkins. When you do look at the overall game plan going forward, what are you going to want to see, John, from this offense? Because, again, I'm with you. Offensively more than defensively, I put blame on the offense for how they played in this game. What do you want to see more from them going forward?
Well, I think, and if you think about Dallas next week on Monday nights, I mean, if you're going to beat Dallas, you're probably going to have to outscore Dallas. So you're not going to beat them 17-11. They're going to score some points if Dak Prescott is healthy. And we've already seen the numbers that they've been able to put up early in the season. So you're going to have to win sort of a shootout. Are the Eagles capable of doing that? That's what I said coming into the season. I'm not sure they are. After watching this game, I double down on that. I'm not sure they are. Can Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor, can you throw the football? Those two guys were the game plan, right? Because they had 12 targets of the 24 total. So half of the targets, and they each had 2 receptions. So, 4 out of 12, 33% is not very good. They got to improve the passing game, and I think that's what Nick Sirianni was talking about, the fine line. The off-schedule stuff is great, but even better is putting the back foot in the ground, throwing the football on time, and completing passes down the field. Can the Eagles get to that point? That's what we're trying to find out with Jalen Hurts.
Gotcha. John, appreciate you joining us, my friend. Really do, from Linc Financial Field and working your way through the technological hardships. So we do appreciate that, John. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. John McMullen joining us from Linc Financial Field. Yeah. Question mark, tight ends. Where were they? It definitely needed them a little bit more in this game. We're going to break it down further when we come back here on Live Postgame Show. And don't forget, Live Postgame Show is brought to us and presented by Ocean Casino Resort. Go for the win. Go Birds. More Eagles coverage when we come back here on Live Postgame Show with Mark Farzetta, Devin Caney, and Derek Gunn.